Whether the team is performing clean or unsightly, we'll cover it all here on Washington Football Nightly. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. Curtis Samuel, never ever trust a man with two first names, back at practice on Monday for the Burgundy and Gold. It's been a hot topic of discussion amongst the media in Washington. When was he going to be on the practice field? Would he be 100% come week one? Would he even be able to suit up week one? Had not been at practice in a full capacity since the groin injury back in OTAs. What was his status heading into week number one? So Curtis Samuel practiced for the first time on Monday. Ron talked about Curtis's practice and how he would be viewed moving forward. Sounds like he's going to play. I've alluded to this all along. Ron never really seemed all that alarmed by Curtis Samuel's injury nor COVID-19. Ron essentially played it coy the entire time, like, hey, we feel confident he'll be ready. If he's not, we're good. We got a bunch of receivers. We kept 7 on the roster, okay, on the final 53-man roster. So if he can't go, we got 6 other dudes that we're really confident in. And this is the thing that last year we weren't able to do. If Terry McLaurin got injured last year, we weren't able to say, we're okay, we got more speed. That's the difference between this year's team and last year's team on offense, in particular at the wide receiver position. We've got more speed this year than ever before. I shouldn't say ever before. More speed this year than in years past. And you might be able to say than ever before. We really have never had this much speed at receiver, and we could even use more speed. But when you look at Terry McLaurin, De'Ami Brown, Curtis Samuel, and DeAndre Carter, all of these guys are certified burners and can run. So when one of these guys goes down, you just look at the next guy and say, all right, you're up. We're going to need some big plays. We're going to need some juice. We're going to need someone that can take the top off the defense, and you're up. We couldn't have done that last year. So Ron is essentially saying, hey, we're good whether he plays or not. Now, not everybody on the roster can do what this guy can do, especially from a versatility standpoint. But we're good. We got other guys that we're very comfortable in their ability to get the job done. And if he can't come out and help us week one, we'll be fine. Well, Ron is somewhat backed off of that statement to say that, hey, we feel really good about where he is. We didn't want to push him too hard at practice. So had this been a normal practice, let's say a normal practice week, because, things are a little different. Normally, guys don't show up for practice and install until Wednesday. Because of the, weirdness of this year, and this is the first year of no 4th preseason game, everything was a little bit different. So they practice on Monday. No practice today on Tuesday. They'll be back on the practice field on Wednesday, and then the week will feel normal. We'll get a presser from offensive coordinator Scott Turner. We'll probably hear from Ryan Fitzpatrick. Maybe we won't. Maybe we will. We just heard from him, seems like the other day, but maybe we'll hear from him, which is the day you usually hear from the starting quarterback on Wednesdays, and we'll hear from Ron. And then on Thursday, you'd get Jack Del Rio normally. You'd get Ron again. And you'd get a defensive player a lot of times. But we'll see what happens and how things go this week in terms of that. But Ron said he wants to see how Curtis, and this has been a standard Ron Rivera line when it comes to injuries and guys coming back to practice. I want to see how they feel the next day. Well, obviously, we aren't privy to that information because there was no practice today, so the media members weren't able to get out there and ask them, how does Curtis Samuel feel today? However, we'll find out tomorrow, because if he doesn't practice tomorrow, that means there was either a setback or they're not comfortable with how he feels on, his conditioning or on his groin or all of the above. So we're going to see how he responds by if he's out there at practice and what is his availability. Had this been a normal week, he would have been listed at practice as limited. He didn't partake in practice in a full capacity on Monday. He did partake in more practice than he has in a very long time since OTAs, because he's been working off to the side on the side field. He was actually on the main field with the rest of his teammates. So that was a sign pointing in the right direction for Curtis Samuel being healthy enough to go week one. Ron said they're going to cut back the amount of snaps he plays. They don't want to rush him back, but They want him to be impactful for the snaps that he does play. So he's like, hey, if he only plays in, 15 snaps, we want it to be 15 impactful snaps. We don't want him out there for 30 snaps and him not be 100% for those 30 snaps. We want him out there for 15 snaps, and we want him to be full go for 15 snaps. So we'll see how they go with Curtis Samuel. Right now, it's leaning towards him being ready to go week 1. I never doubted this, but again, we're not out of the woods yet. But you guys kept talking about it. The media kept talking about it. I said, if Ron's not worried, I'm not worried. And Ron never seemed worried about this whole Curtis Samuel dynamic and not practicing and not being on the same page with Ryan Fitzpatrick and all of these different things. I said, if Ron's not worried, neither am I. And Ron was never worried, so I was never worried. And I've even heard from different sources that it's not a matter of his groin anymore. It's just about conditioning at this point. It's not even, is his groin sore? Is he still feeling some ill effects from that? He's been fine with the groin. It's just getting him up into football shape. You can't replicate football shape. You only can get into football shape by playing football. And Curtis Samuel hasn't been playing football. So that's really the biggest disconnect right now, is just trying to get him. Remember how long it took them to work Matt Ioannidis back? Like, you don't want to rush a guy that hasn't been playing, because there's in shape and then there's in football shape. They're two totally different things. And obviously, Curtis Samuel not back to football shape quite yet, but they are trending in that direction. He's feeling good. He spoke to the media, said he feels great, but he wants to make sure that once he comes off of the injury list, he doesn't go back on it. And I think that's the right approach to take, is that, hey, I want to be out there week 1. I want to play as much as possible, but I also know that this is not a sprint, but rather a marathon. And they added an extra, leg of the race to this marathon from 16 to 17 games now. So I really need to take care of myself and my body. I don't want to rush this back. And if I'm not ready to go week 1, which I think he is going to be ready to go week 1, even if he's not, it's all in the sake of saying I want to play in 16 or 15 games minimum, instead of rushing back for week 1 and then, re-aggravating something or doing something else, and now he's out 4 to 6 weeks, and now you're missing even more of Curtis Samuel. So everything that is being done is in the best interest of this guy playing as many games as possible this season, not just week 1. I know everybody's excited about week 1, but at the end of the day, it's more about trying to get him on the field for as many of these games as possible, and I think they're taking the right approach. He was back at practice on Monday. We'll see if he's back out on the practice field on Wednesday. Now let's transition to in other news. So we've heard from Ron Rivera and Martin Mayhew on the 53-man roster and its construction. I thought a lot of nice tidbits were gained from their conversation. Martin Mayhew basically came out and said there were guys that might have been just as, if not more talented than some of the guys that we were looking at, but they didn't fit us. And I've contended this, and I've said this at least 5 to 7 times during the process, that Michael Parsons was never on our board. He does not fit what they deem to be a Washington football team member. He doesn't fit in our culture. So I don't think he was ever on their board. And I think there are other guys like that, like a Kadarius Toney. I don't think they were ever considering a Kadarius Toney. Don't think he fits into what they deem to be a Washington football team member. There were just guys that they didn't see as a fit here in Washington. And that's going to be the theme moving forward in future drafts. If there's a guy with a checkered past, that guy more likely than not won't end up here in Washington. Just understand that they're trying to change the culture, and part of changing the culture is wanting high character guys. And Martin Mayhew said that multiple times during that 53-man roster construction presser. And he talked about how normally there are 3 or 4 guys at every stop that he's been at where you can't wait to get those guys out of the building. He said that wasn't the case here. Every single one of those guys fit what we want as a Washington football team player. And it just was a numbers game. So I thought there were a lot of good tidbits there. They talked about Cam Newton briefly. He's not coming here. They're happy with their 3 quarterbacks. Ron did not dismiss the idea of Cam Newton coming here. He pretty much just said, Ryan Fitzpatrick is our starter. We have 3 guys that we like, but I guarantee you if something were to go down, an injury or 2, he wouldn't hesitate to call up Cam Newton. Now, that's what I'm saying, but as far as if these guys stay intact and they're healthy and they're upright, Cam Newton's not coming here to Washington. But a slew of injuries at that position, and Cam would be one of the first guys they would ring on the phone. So that's something to keep in mind. But again, I don't see Cam Newton ending up here just because guys aren't playing well or anything of the sort. So I thought that was another thing to gain from the presser. The linebacker position was another big topic of conversation after the 53-man roster was released. And they pretty much said, hey, we like the guys that we have. We kept 4 guys on the roster. You know, they had some guys on the practice squad. If they needed to pull them up, they would. Well, lo and behold, Peyton Barber gets snatched off of our practice squad, which opened up another spot on the practice squad. So they brought in another linebacker, they replaced him with Jonathan Williams, who was here in camp at the running back position. But I told you there were going to be some things that they would play around with on the 53-man roster. We'll talk about those things here in a second as we will take a closer look. But a number of topics to get to in this particular segment of the show. We're going to dive into the depth chart. So the final depth chart has been released, and I think there were some interesting takeaways from that. We'll go over the offensive, defensive, and special teams sides of the football with regards to the depth chart. We'll take a look at the practice squad, 16 players in all on the practice squad, and I'll give you the biggest takeaways from that list as well. And I don't want to spend a ton of time on Peyton Barber moving on to Vegas, but that's my guy. And so I'm going to talk about that very briefly because I have a message for all of you fans out there, especially the ones that wanted Peyton Barber gone. So we're going to talk about his departure after getting a fully guaranteed contract to be with the Vegas Raiders for the upcoming season. So with that said, let's take a closer look at the depth chart for this football team, starting with the offensive side of the football. So not a lot of surprises here. Everything looks pretty much status quo, especially when you talk about the first team. There are no surprises here. Terry McLaurin is your starting wide receiver as an X. You've got Charles Leno Jr. at left tackle. You've got Eric Flowers at left guard. You've got Chase Roullier at center, Brandon Sheriff at right guard, Sam Cosmi, the rookie, at right tackle. That's your starting offensive line. We've known that probably since the second preseason game. Then you get to the tight end position. Logan Thomas, starting tight end, that was never in question. Adam Humphries starting inside as your slot receiver. And Curtis Samuel right now slated to be your starting Z wide receiver on the opposite side of Terry McLaurin. Quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick, we knew that going into camp. It was never really a serious quarterback competition. I don't think anybody ever really looked at it that way. Ron continued to talk about it as if it were one, but it never really was. Ron would not commit to a quarterback, but we all knew what was going on, and we could read the writing on the wall. And then Antonio Gibson is your starting running back. So no big changes there. Everything that we see there was what we expected. As you get to the second wave, though, I do have a couple of questions, or just one in particular. Just want to focus on the guard positions at the backups. At left guard, they have Wes Schweitzer as your backup guard. So if Eric Flowers is struggling or he goes down to an injury, Schweitzer would slide in. Okay, that's what I expected. I also expected if Brandon Sheriff were to have the same thing where if he struggles, he's not coming out. But if he goes down to injury, I would expect Wes Schweitzer to be the guy to go in for him. Sadiq Charles is actually his backup. Now, is that just for cosmetic reasons to say that, hey, he's a backup guard and tackle? Just need you to know that. I still surmise that Eric Flowers or Brandon Sheriff go down. Wes Schweitzer is the first guy in as a guard. Is it specifically right guard that they want to see Sadiq Charles get in at if Sheriff were to go down? And if so, would he be the first guy in the game? That's something to keep an eye on. I'm interested by that. Hopefully we never have to find that out. Hopefully Eric Flowers picks up where he left off when he was here the first time. plays really well, stays healthy. We don't have to worry about that. Same thing for Brandon Sheriff. But if that were to come about, I'd like to see what they do at right guard, or if Wes Schweitzer would be in, or if they would go with Sadiq Charles. I think the only other thing here to pay attention to is the third string tight end. So we made a lot about the 3 tight ends that we thought they were going to keep. They ultimately kept 4. So we just assumed, okay, not we, I assumed, I don't want to speak for any of you out there, that Ricky Seals-Jones would be a guy that would be the third string tight end, the TE3 on this roster, and Sammy Reyes would be more likely than not inactive on game days. Now, that could still be the case when it's all said and done. But looking at this depth chart right now, Sammy Reyes is your third tight end. So on game day right now, as it stands, he'd be active on game days as your TE3. Now, again, I think it really boils down to, how do they feel about him after a week of practice? Where do they feel like he is in the process? How is he digesting the game plan? I think he's more of a project for down the road. I still think that Ricky Seals-Jones is the guy that gets the nod on game day. But, right now, Sammy Reyes, TE3, something to discuss, something to keep an eye on. But I think when we get that first list of inactives for week number 1, I do believe Sammy Reyes will be on the inactive list. We will see. I'm rooting for the kid. I want to see him play, but I also want the best players out there available that can help us win. Don't know if Sammy Reyes is one of those players at this current moment. So that's the offensive depth chart. Let's take a look at the defensive depth chart. And again, not a lot of movement here. Nothing, eye-popping. Let's comb this real quick, and I'll give you a couple of takeaways that stood out to me from this. So obviously, the starters look exactly the same with one exception, and I think there were question marks. I had a lot of people asking me this question. I couldn't really give them a definitive answer. So we'll go through this, and I'll get to that thing at the very end. So Chase Young and Montez Sweat are your 2 starting defensive ends with Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen in the middle. Nothing has changed there. Your ones across the board on the D-line still intact. Cole Holcomb, Jamin Davis, John Bostic, your 3 starting linebackers. Again, all of that intact. All of that is what we expected. You get to the secondary. Kendall Fuller, William Jackson III, Landon Collins, all starters. Cameron Curl starting at free safety is the first thing that jumped out at me, because there were a lot of people asking who starts at safety. Is it Bobby McCain? Is it Cam Curl? And my response has always been, it doesn't really matter. They're all going to play. And you're going to see them on the field quite a bit with one another. But Cameron Curl is going to get the first crack at the free safety position. Keep in mind, he's going to move around quite a bit. And so you'll see Bobby McCain getting some run quite a bit as well. So Cam Curl is your starting free safety for those of you who were wondering. Cameron Curl will be your starting free safety. If we come out in our base personnel, all right, which means 4 down linemen, 3 linebacker, 4 defensive backs, Cameron Curl will be your second starting safety along with Landon Collins. So you get to the second string, again, much of the same, nothing really noteworthy there. However, there is one thing that jumped out at me here. And we talked about the linebacker position and how they kept Khaleke Hudson. And that was it. They had their 3 starters, Khaleke Hudson, that was it. So I told you they're going to play around with the roster. And I said, you're going to see some guys be placed on IR once they make the team. Because if you place a guy on IR prior to the 53-man roster construction, they're out for the season. You put them on IR after the 53-man roster construction, they're only out for a minimum, I think, of 3 weeks they have to be out for. So I thought that we were going to see 2 or 3 guys that might have been banged up. I was worried about Torrey McTyer. Remember, he sustained the concussion in that final preseason game against the Ravens. He's fine. Media spoke to him the other day, so he's good to go. But David Mayo is now back. So you look at the outside linebacker positions, and you got David Mayo as your backup there. He's a guy that they cut initially, brought back to the roster. How were they able to do that? Derek Forrest, the guy that made this 53-man roster as a rookie safety out of Cincinnati, is still favoring that hamstring. It's still lingering. And so they put him on IR. He'll be back later on this season. Maybe he won't. We'll see. But David Mayo has taken his roster spot, and that's why you see him here listed as the backup linebacker to both Cole Holcomb and John Bostic. So that was the other takeaway. Everything else looks pretty much status quo. Nothing out of order. Nothing very eye-grabbing. So you move on to the final depth chart, and that is on special teams. Again, most of this looks pretty much the way we assumed it would look. But just the only thing that jumps out at me here, DeAndre Carter is your starter at both kickoff and punt returner. So he's going to get the first crack at doing this. This is really the sole reason he made this football team. You know, Ron can build you up on, hey, he did a great job in camp as a receiver. And he actually did. I talked about that several times throughout camp. And he's making plays as a receiver, not just as a return guy. But then when we got into the preseason, we hardly saw him even touch the football in a receiving capacity. This is why he's here. They feel like he gives them a bit of juice in the returns game. If he holds on to the football and can spark that returns game, he'll be here all year in that capacity. If he can't, if there are fumbling issues, if he's not giving them enough, I think they'll move on from him. And you look at the guys that are backing him up. Jarrett Patterson, remember I talked about, Peyton Barber potentially being active on game day and Jarrett Patterson still not being active. Well, that's gone now. Obviously, Peyton Barber has gone on to greener pastures with the Vegas Raiders. And so now Jarrett Patterson doesn't have any choice but to dress. They're dressing three backs. He's going to be one of those guys. So he may have an impact on this football team. And again, if DeAndre Carter is having issues as a kick returner, Patterson has already shown them the ability to do that. So he's a guy that would be in line for that. And then Dax Milne is a guy that I thought surprised towards the end of camp. I told you he was coming on strong. I still didn't think it was going to warrant a roster spot. They did not want to cut one of the guys they drafted. They gave him the nod, and he's there as their backup punt returner. And Ron said this in one of the pressers last week. He said the beauty of it is now we've got four guys that can return punts for us. We've set it up now to where we're really comfortable with what we have. I think it's three, and then he talked about Jarrett Patterson returning kickoffs. But he said, look, we've got DeAndre Carter, we've got Dax Milne, and he's like, in an emergency, we've got Adam Humphries. We don't want Hump back there, but if we need it, he can go back there and field punts for us. So they feel really confident that they not only have one punt returner, but now they have three. So the punt return position was a real big question mark going into the season. They've handled it for now. We'll see how it goes. But they've got guys. They've got bodies. They've got guys that can go back there, field the football, and we'll see if DeAndre Carter can make something happen with these opportunities that he's going to get. So that's special teams. Nothing major there. Again, you got Tressway as your punter, Dustin Hopkins as your place kicker, and, of course, Cameron Cheeseman as your long snapper. So we move to the practice squad. And, again, not a lot here to really digest other than a few guys back. Obviously, you see William Bradley King was the only rookie of this draft class to not make the 53-man roster. 10 draft picks by Washington this year. 9 made the 53-man roster. William Bradley King, the lone guy that did not. Antonio Gandy Golden back on the practice squad after being released in his second year with this football team being a fourth-round pick a season ago. Danny Johnson back with the team. Love Danny Johnson. Love what he brings to the table. Glad that he's back on the practice squad. But, the biggest thing I wanted to pay attention to was the two linebackers. We talked about them potentially keeping 6. I did, at least. Not you guys. I talked about them keeping 6. And I thought they would keep Jarrett Norris and, of course, David Mayo. Well, both of those guys ended up getting cut. They kept 4. Mayo back on the active roster now after the team put Derek Forrest, the rookie safety, on IR. That freed up a roster spot. Mayo is now in. Derek Forrest is out. You see the two linebackers here that they really like and want to continue to work with. Jordan Kuznick, that we talked about in the camp session of things. The young undrafted player out of California. They really like him. And Jarrett Norris is the core special teamer. If anything happens to any of our core special teamers, Norris, best believe, will be brought up to replace that guy on the roster. So that's the first half of the practice squad, the first 8 guys. Okay, Keith Ishmael, if you remember, was a draft pick last year along with Gandy Golden. So those 2 guys they want to continue to work with. Let's take a look at the second half. And this is the biggest part of this practice squad. So right away, you notice Jeremy Reeves back on the practice squad. That was a guy we relied on last year heavily at the safety position. That's a guy that I think we may have to rely on again heavily this year, as we have only 4 guys right now on the roster. Now, again, if Derek Forrest comes back, they'll have a 5th safety. But right now, you only got 4 safeties on the active roster. So Jeremy Reeves is a guy that definitely needs to stick around. You look at the rest of this list. Jonathan Williams brought in because of the departure of Peyton Barber. So he gives us 1 running back on the practice squad. No quarterbacks on this practice squad. If you have been paying attention, they did not bring back Steven Montez. Really, there was no reason to. He's not any good. We've talked about this already. But the biggest thing that you should be looking at here is at the very top. Does not have a picture with us. He just got here. That's why. Eddie Pinheiro, place kicker, undrafted back in 2018 out of Florida. Spent his first offseason with the Raiders, was then cut. Ended up latching on with the Chicago Bears. He went 23 of 28 with the Bears back in 2019. That's his lone year of service in this league. So he did not kick in the NFL in 2020. He's back in the league now on Washington's practice squad. Okay, so in his career, 82.1% field goal percentage, 23 of 28 for the Bears back in 2019. And you ask, well, shit, that's not too bad. Why isn't he a kicker in this league? Why hasn't he latched on with someone? And you know, look, teams have kicking, battles and guys get opportunities and they just get beat out. Teams are comfortable with the kicker that they already have, like us here in Washington. You could have easily replaced Dustin Hopkins this offseason if you were kind of teetering, but they're comfortable with him. Ron said he came up clutch for us at the end of the season last year, went 13 of 14 down the stretch to finish up the season. We feel confident in his abilities. We're going to hold on to our guy. So Eddie Pinheiro being on this roster, it shouldn't raise an eyebrow. We had a kicker on this roster last year, just to make sure that if something happens, you got a guy you can bring up already in your camp, already in your system. So don't read too much into this, but just know Eddie Pinheiro, 50 of kicks, 50 yards or more. He was 2 of 2 with the Bears in 2019. Kicks from 30 to 39 yards. He was 9 of 10. Kicks from 20 to 29 yards. He was 8 of 8. The reason I think he's not on an NFL roster right now is because from the money distance, I've dubbed this the money distance. The bulk of your kicks are going to come from the 40 to 49 yard distance. Now for him, you play in an inept offense in the red zone like the Chicago Bears back in 2019, which they struggled. You're going to kick a lot of 30 to 39 yarders. You don't want your kicker kicking 30 to 39 yard field goals. That means you got essentially as close as you could get to the end zone inside the 10-yard line, and you couldn't punch it in. Now you got to settle for a field goal. You don't want those. So you want to be kicking 40 to 49 yard field goals. Drive stalls out at the 23-yard line. Got to kick a 41 yarder. Drive stalls out at the 25. Got to kick a 43-yard field goal. That's, those things happen. You don't want to be kicking short field goals. That being said, he was 3 of 7 from the money distance. Okay, 40 to 49 yards. That'll get you out of the league quick, fast, and in a hurry. And that's what happened to Eddie Pinheiro. So he's here with us now in our system, on our practice squad. Just know, and I've said this before, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. So I'm rolling with our guy, Dustin Hopkins. We'll see how he does to start the season off. And if he struggles, if he gets injured, we've got Eddie Pinheiro to potentially bring him up and see what he's able to provide for us. So that is the practice squad, and that is our closer look for today. Now, I quickly want to talk about Peyton Barber. He's now a member of the Las Vegas Raiders, and it's not a big deal. It really is not. I just wanted to bring this up because a lot of fans wanted him gone. Didn't see the value in a Peyton Barber. only a short yardage back, only averaging, 2 point something yards a carry or 3 point something yards a carry, something really meager and minuscule. He only does one thing. He's a one-trick pony, yada, yada, yada. I've heard all of the excuses as to why he shouldn't be here. And that's fine. I think Jaret Patterson is, in fact, an upgrade over him. I'm not debating that. And I'm not here to debate that. He, to me, was like my guy, Liam Neeson from the, what's the name of those movies? Where he would track down his daughter, it seemed like every movie. Something would go wrong. And he would get on the phone, and in the first movie, classic line where he gets on the phone and he says, I have a specific set of skills that I've acquired over a number of years. And he essentially says, I will hunt you, I will find you, I will kill you. He had a specific set of skills. Peyton Barber had a specific set of skills that allowed him to thrive for us last year. You guys wanted him gone, and you can talk about him only being a short yardage back, this, that, and the third. That's fine. If we don't convert on 4th and 3rd downs and short this year, I don't want to hear your mouths. You're going to hear mine. I don't want to hear yours. Okay? Just letting you know right now. I don't want to hear it from you guys. And I don't want to hear about play calling or none of that bullshit. When we get it 4th and 1 and we decide to run it and one of these backs gets stuffed. Okay? And they didn't have the second or the third effort that Peyton Barber always delivers. Not sometimes, always delivers to get that yard that we need to move the sticks. Don't talk to me about Jaret Patterson can do it and this guy can do it. We're going to find out. Because they gave Patterson opportunities in preseason. He didn't get it. They gave Antonio Gibson an opportunity in the preseason. He didn't get it. Okay, they gave Peyton Barber another opportunity. Remember, he got stopped on a 3rd and 1, I believe, against the Patriots in the first preseason game. And he didn't even get a chance to get going. Free runner off the edge, tackled him before he could even get going. But that touchdown run in the red zone, right before half against the Patriots, where they gave it to him, and he had a second and a third effort and got in, that's what he brings to the table. He's no longer here to bring that to the table. So I hope one of these guys are ready to assume that role. I hope it's Antonio Gibson. But I'm just letting you know, the hammer is no longer here. And if we don't pick those up, I don't want to hear any of your mouths because you wanted them gone. So let's finish up this show with a couple of things. Number one, let's get to these jersey numbers real quick and knock this out. So we got a bunch of new jersey numbers, obviously, because the roster is now finalized. It's been crystallized. We know who's here, who's not going to be here. So now numbers have changed. This is what it looks like. So when a guy gets in the game, you're not confused as to who's number 1 or who's number 20. Now you're going to know. So DeAndre Carter was 16 in camp and in the preseason. He's now switched his jersey to number 1. I don't really know why he waited to do that because 1 was always available. If he wanted to be number 1, he should have just been number 1 from the jump. Maybe he was like, I don't want to be number 1 unless I make the team. Okay, cool, whatever. He's now number 1. Cam Sims switched his jersey number, and I'm pretty sure most of you know these jersey number switches already. I'm just reiterating them for you. Some of you don't know. So 89 was Cam Sims' jersey number last year, and all the successive years prior to that, or all the previous years, I should say, to that, his jersey number was 89. He's now making the switch to 11. Okay, that number was held by Antonio Gandy Golden. It was Alex Smith's number last year. So now no more Alex Smith on the roster, no more Antonio Gandy Golden on the active roster. That paved the way for Cam Sims to get number 11. Adam Humphries was number 19 throughout camp, and in the preseason, he's made the switch to his college number and the number that he's really been practically his whole entire NFL career, which is 13. So Adam Humphries, now number 13, making the switch from 19. Antonio Gandy Golden is on the practice squad, so this isn't really that relevant now, but should he be pulled up from the practice squad, he's no longer 11. He's now number 18, previously held by Isaiah Wright, who is no longer on this football team. So Antonio Gandy Golden now number 18, but he's on the practice squad. So again, that's not really that relevant as of right now. Bobby McCain came into camp as number 38, remained 38 throughout the preseason, Now that the final roster has been solidified, he's now number 20. Jimmy Moreland last held number 20. He's no longer on the team. That freed up 20. And I told you, guys are usually dying to get into the 20s. So Bobby McCain jumped at the opportunity to get his hands on number 20. So he'll be donning 20 for the Burgundy and Gold this upcoming season, moving from 38, which he was all offseason. Jarrett Patterson, we had this big discussion about Patterson's number. He was 35, so was Torrey McTyer. It couldn't have two 35s. Who was going to get a brand new number? I was hoping it was going to be Jarrett Patterson. It turned out to be Jarrett Patterson. But where did he go? Not high enough for me, but I can take and stomach 32, which is what he's moved to. He was 35 in camp and in the preseason. He's now number 32. That will be his number on game days. We'll see if that brings him any luck. And Torrey McTyer, we talked about two 35s, one on each side of the ball. One with Jarrett Patterson, one with Torrey McTyer. He sticks at 35. He will remain 35 the duration of this season. And Danny Johnson no longer on this roster, but Danny Johnson was previously number 32. He is now 36. He's on the practice squad, but I have a feeling we'll see Danny Johnson at some point this season. So if you do see a 36 running across your screen, it's Danny Johnson, and that him not making the roster freed up 32 for a guy like Jarrett Patterson to then move to number 32. So that's pretty much it for your man Louie T here on the inaugural episode or season premiere of the Washington Football Nightly program. Feels good to be back. Feels good. And looking forward to bringing you this coverage all season long of the Burgundy and Gold. Remember, if it happens here, your man Louie T's got you covered. I am a Washington fan, etched in Burgundy and Gold. My Washington spirit will never die. Washington spirit will never fold. Until we meet again, hail to our beloved Washington football team. Looking forward to chopping it up with you guys tomorrow night live here on the Washington Football Nightly program. We'll have a ton to talk about, including the players back on the practice field, and we'll get our first injury report for the upcoming game. Hopefully that thing is clean as a whistle with all this extra time off. Curtis Samuel, more likely than not, will be on it. We'll see what his status is for the upcoming game. We'll hear from a few of the coaches, including more likely than not Scott Turner. Looking forward to hearing from everyone and getting this thing kicked off the right way. And we'll be on the eve of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Dallas Cowboys kicking off the 2021 NFL campaign. I've got tickets to give away to all of the MOBB Squad members. So if you're a MOBB Squad member out there, you're interested in going to this the second game of the season, Giants at Washington Thursday Night Football, I've got 2 tickets. Going to give that away as a drawing and a token of my appreciation for being a member of the MOBB. So if you're not a member of the MOBB Squad, you know what to do. The link is down in the description of this and every single video that I do. So check that out and become a member of the MOBB Squad. Speaking of members of the MOBB Squad, if you are a gold member, we will have our first exclusive meet and greet on Wednesday night, right before the live viewing of the Washington Football Nightly program. So we'll have our first, I think it's Talking with T or something like that, whatever the hell it's called. It'll be a mob meeting, essentially. It'll be MOBB Bidness being handled. And I got a couple of things to disclose to you guys. So you'll be getting a message if you're a gold member of the MOBB. Make sure you're taking a look at the community wall, and you should be getting a post there and a link to join that video tomorrow night. Hopefully you're able to join. So with that being said, oh yeah, if you're a Washington football team member or fan, excuse me, and you want in, there's still time. A couple of days left. Any of the LTN exclusives football pool. That's a weekly football pool. So it's not a year-long commitment, just a weekly thing. You think you got what it takes to win all the money? $7 a sheet. Got to have PayPal or Cash App. That's the way you would pay. That's the way you would get paid should you win. All the details, again, I've done a video. I'll do another one here shortly. But all the links are down in the description to sign up. And then you go there, and then you would be able to register if you want to play in the league, the Winners and Losers League, which is a year-long league where you got to put in picks every single week. $25 to get in. Winner takes all, championship belt, all of the money, and all the spoils goes to the victor. You want in, you think you're better than me, your man Louie T, two-time reigning Winners and Losers champ. Come and get some. I want all the smoke, but trust me, y'all don't have it for me. And then the Soul Survivor pool, I have not won. This is the 9th year I've done it. I'm 0 for 8. Something's got to give. This has got to be the year. If you want in on this Soul Survivor pool, again, there's still time. That is, I think, a $20 entry fee, if I'm not mistaken. So check that out as well. All of the links are down in the description. Just go to LouieTeeNetwork.net/LTN exclusives. Again, that link is down in the description as well. And you'll see everything you need to get you started in any of those different leagues. And so look forward to hearing from you guys. In any event, that's all I've got for you today. I thank you guys for joining me here on the Washington Football Nightly program. I look forward to chopping it up with you all season long here on the Washington Football Nightly program. Until next time, you guys take care. Have a good one.
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. There's the snap, hand to Riggins. Good hold. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone. The 35, the 30, the